I wanted to discuss why a constitutional amendment is given a resolution chapter in California. When a bill is enacted by the legislature and signed into law by the governor, the last step in the legislative process is the ministerial duty of the California Secretary of State, who assigns a chapter number to that enacted bill. Now, according to the Office of Legislative Counsel here in California, after a bill has been signed by the governor, the Secretary of State assigns the bill a chapter number. For example, Chapter 123 of the Statutes of 1998. And that is how we generally refer to these bills thereafter. These chapter numbers are assigned to bills in numeric order as those bills are enacted into law, and the chapter numbers are used for only a single calendar year of that 2-year legislative session rather than the 2-year period. So that means at the start of each calendar year, the chapter numbers begin again with number 1. So for example, in the 2022 California legislative session, there were 997 chaptered laws. The first, of course, was Chapter 1, and the last was Chapter 997. So any bills enacted into law in the 2023 legislative session will first start with Chapter 1. In addition, 2 of the 3 types of resolutions, so those are joint and concurrent, so not House resolutions in the California legislature, are also assigned resolution chapter numbers in the same manner as a bill, starting with Resolution Chapter 1. So all the joint resolutions and the concurrent resolutions, whether Assembly or Senate, they have to pass both houses of the legislature. And so both of these are assigned a resolution chapter. Now, the Office of Legislative Counsel defines a concurrent resolution as a measure that can be introduced in either house of the legislature, but must be approved by both houses and filed with the Secretary of State in order to take effect. Of course, the governor's signature is not required for either a joint or concurrent resolution. And concurrent resolutions are generally ones that involve the business of the legislature. The Office of Legislative Counsel gives as an example the adoption of the joint rules of the Assembly and the Senate. The other type is a joint resolution. Joint resolutions are also are also adopted by both houses of the legislature, and they are used to express an opinion about an issue that pertains to the federal government. And these are forwarded to one or both houses of the Congress and sometimes the president. Joint resolutions also require approval of both houses, so both the Assembly and Senate, but just like other resolutions, they don't require approval by the governor. So what about constitutional amendments that are passed by the legislature and put before the state's voters? A Senate constitutional amendment, SCAs, or an Assembly constitutional amendment, ACAs, are required to pass both houses of the legislature by a 2/3 vote, and they are also chaptered by the Secretary of State. Now, remember that the governor doesn't take any final action on a constitutional amendment. So they still go to the Secretary of State, just like a bill, just like a concurrent or joint resolution, but they too are not acted upon by the governor. Now, if you look in the 2022 legislative session at SCA 10 by Atkins, it shows in its final history, chaptered by the Secretary of State, Resolution Chapter 97, Statutes of 2022. Now, why does it say RES period, which stands for resolution, in front of the word chapter? It's not given a bill chapter number. An ACA, or in this case SCA 10, is given a resolution chapter. So why is that? A simple reason. A constitutional amendment is adopted by both houses of the legislature, minimum 2/3 vote. But when it's adopted by the legislature is proposing an amendment to the Constitution for consideration and vote by the people. So SCA 10, if you read it, actually says It's a resolution to propose to the people of the state of California an amendment to the Constitution of the state by adding Section 1.1 to Article 1 relating to fundamental rights. And so a constitutional amendment receives a resolution chapter number rather than a bill chapter number because it in fact operates as a resolution with a proposal to the people of the state of California to amend our state constitution. And so that's why constitutional amendments are actually given resolution chapter numbers rather than bill chapter numbers.